season starts here, the Vancouver Boat Show.
Welcome to the Vancouver International Boat Show virtual seminar series, sponsored by Freedom Marine International Yacht Sales, the premier choice for exploring the passion of yachting. Thank you for joining us. The seminar will begin in 1 moment. If you are having technical difficulties, you can reach me, the online moderator, via the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. Questions for the speaker can be added to the Q&A box also at the bottom of your screen. We will answer these at the end of the presentation. Now, it is our pleasure to present Buying Tips for Marine Electronics with Andy McDonald. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone, and really appreciate you guys joining us today. Thanks so much. My name's Andy McDonald. I'm the founder of Bluewater, and I'm here with you today to try and help demystify the complex world of marine electronics. I'll go ahead and tell you a little bit about who I am and what I do, and then we can get right into what you guys have all signed up to learn about today. Although I grew up in Lake Ontario, in a town called Kingston, I've always been visiting family in British Columbia, and I've truly felt connected to the West Coast. Growing up back there, Kingston has always been known for its robust sailing and boating community. In fact, Kingston hosted the sailing events for the 1976 Montreal Summer Olympics. It really turned out to be the perfect place to cultivate my passion for the industry. My interest in boats led to a temporary move to Vancouver, which was ultimately the catalyst behind my decision to become a marine entrepreneur and eventually the commencement of Bluewater. Since I started Bluewater in 1999, our team has been working on yachts and commercial vessels of all sizes in the Metro Vancouver area, providing marine electrical, mechanical, fiberglass, bottom paint, electronics, and consulting services. With interprovincial Red Seal endorsed electricians, ITA certified marine mechanics, and Quadrant Marine Institute marine service technicians, we are focused on providing the best boat service experience in BC and beyond. We really are trying to break the mold in terms of the traditional marine service shop. Our investment in training is unmatched in the industry, and we take a great deal of pride in being able to offer the most professional service available in the marketplace. We believe in upfronted, documented work plans and estimates, and frequent and detailed communication to build a long-term, trusting relationship with our clients. Our growing team of marine professionals is standing by to work with clients and industry partners, and every day is striving to provide a complete and carefree experience on the water, delivered by the most skilled and enthusiastic team of marine professionals in BC. I've got a video here that we've put together to give you a good idea of what we do when it comes to marine electronics and electrical systems. From our standpoint, in doing work on and providing the most technical equipment that's out there, what we're attempting to do is, break down and make more simple for people things that are otherwise intimidating. Things like radars, things like anchors even, we're there to provide advice and, hopefully make it more of a simple and comfortable experience for people when they're out on the boat. Electrical is very black and white, and although there are different ways to do things, the fundamentals are always the same. A lot of people can go in and replace a battery, but doing a water maker or a satellite communication system or a complex electronic package, autopilots, etc., inverters can be really complicated. We're the only ones employing certified IP interprovincial Red Seal electricians. Whether you're starting from scratch, installing something that's a fresh piece of equipment on the boat, or you're going in trying to troubleshoot and repair something that's faulty. The nice thing about electrical is that there is no gray area. We know it's an equation, the way electricity in terms of voltage, amperage, and wattage works, and we can always come back to that fundamentally when we're troubleshooting things. We can go as far as complete rewire
on a refit, but whether it's an old boat, a new boat, whether it's a boat that sustained damage. We have a lot of clients that come in and have had insurance issues. So yeah, we're working from, starting from zero and doing a full design on an electrical system. The design work, the installation, and the execution of it is something that we do and do well and are quite proud of.
So a good place for us to start today is probably ask, why even bother with electronics? We all know a seasoned sailor or two that will try to revel us with stories of using sextants and paper charts and how all the new gadgetry is a waste of time and money. The reality is, we have seen such amazing innovation in the marine electronics space, especially over recent years, that budget as a barrier to entry has been almost completely removed. More often than not, we find there is a fit that we can put together for all different types and sizes of projects. This has made it very easy for us at Bluewater to be so invested in the design of marine electronic systems and the championing of their many benefits. The reduction in prices that we are seeing as a result of the broadening of the overall manufacturer offering and the modern production efficiencies we're seeing in factories really is making the segment accessible to the broader market. The safety and convenience gained with a properly engineered and deployed system cannot be understated. These systems can range from something as simple as a handheld VHF radio to allow you to keep in communication with other vessels and shore stations, all the way to a fully integrated PC-aided navigation suite. While it is easy to be intimidated by the breadth of offering in the category, it's something we pride ourselves on in simplifying the information and providing guidance on best practices in order to make the entire decision-making process an informative and fun one for our clients. Whether you have none and would like to dip your toe in the water, or you're looking to do a full-scale refit of a legacy system, we're here to fill in the blanks and get you confident in understanding what the vast array of electronics available to you are and what they can do for you. Looking at the illustration we've got up here on the slide, we've arranged it to highlight the multifunction display as the central nervous system of the entire electronic suite on a vessel. Working from the 12 o'clock position up top on the image, you can see that we have the sonar or fish finder, the radar, the autopilot, the AIS, the VHF radio, vessel info and integration, and other sensors to assist you with system integration, and finally the EPIRB or personal locator beacon. We're going to touch on all these in more detail as we go along. This slide just gives us a really simple look at the typical components all put together. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Now that we know the basic components that make up our system, we want to figure out what it is we need. Identifying what kind of buyer you are may sound kind of redundant, but it is a very important part of the process. It will eliminate you focusing on things that might not be applicable to your current situation. Whether you're looking at a solution for a smaller runabout or fishing vessel, a larger sailboat or motor yacht, or trying to outfit a large vessel or workboat, electronics are a valuable addition, and knowing what you need and what you do not will save you time and money. The chart plotter, which we've all probably heard of, or multifunction display, is generally a starting point for every marine electronic system we see, small or large. These units have a great deal of functionality and provide the interface for the user to access all the features provided by the connected equipment. Today, all of the major brands have developed the software and graphic interfaces to be very user-friendly, with the vast majority having touchscreen functionality. Once we have our main multifunction unit chosen, most will actually include an internal GPS antenna. This makes installation very easy and quick. Larger vessels and systems often include an external GPS antenna in the design to allow for physical installations of the multifunction displays in locations that may be blocked from the sky view they're required to gain an accurate GPS fix. The multifunction display can also be a black box processor, similar to a computer, that outputs its information to an LCD PC-style display. This is the type of thing we often see on larger vessels where we expect to see a computer also running navigation software and fully integrated to the marine multifunction processor. We like this redundancy, and this type of system design provided on our larger deployments. The multifunction display will provide real-time information and a display of your exact location. All chart plotters offer a number of functions, including these and ranging from creating waypoints and routes to displaying navigational data like course over ground, speed, and time to destination. Often the first item we see added to the multifunction display is the sonar or fish finder. This is similar to the internal GPS antenna, where many of today's multifunction displays will include the fish finder functionality built right in. So that's all that's required for you is a transducer of your choice to get a working fish finder or sonar and start catching those fish. Transducers, as you see on this slide, can be mounted as a through hull underneath the boat, inside the hull, shooting through the bottom of the boat, or on the transom. All of these options are going to give you a real-time look at the seabed, fish, the structure below you, and a simple depth number that are under your boat. The next item, and probably the most important addition we can make to our electronic system from a safety perspective, is radar. Although there are many different types of radar antennas and systems, fundamentally, they all provide the same benefit, which is added visibility of your surroundings and potential hazards. These great tools are not only useful to us in providing images of our surroundings in low visibility conditions like fog and low light, but also in providing images for things that are beyond what the naked eye can interpret. These antennas broadcast pulses, which are reflected back by other boats, land, or even heavy rainstorms. These are displayed as images on the MFD. Most of today's radar conversations we have involve talking about overlaying the radar image on the chart. This gives you a really clear picture of the hazards and dynamic objects that are surrounding you on the water, but are not actually indicated on the navigation chart. Radar is certainly not a required element to get you out on the water, but it is one that will make you safer and extend your boating conditions, allowing you to make passage when you otherwise would not have been able to transit. Most common systems we see on leisure vessels today have an effective range of up to 24 miles for the smaller domes, all the way up to 96 miles for the large 6 and 8 foot open array units, where you see the actual antenna spinning. Now that we have ourselves a good chart plotter and we know what fish finder and radar will do for us, it's time to think about another piece of equipment that folks will often put in the nice to have category, but can really also be viewed as a piece of safety equipment. This one is the autopilot. And while the term sounds complicated, realizing the benefit is not. A properly installed and set up autopilot can really make it seem as if you have another crew member with you. Whether it's holding a course while you hoist the sails, spelling you off the helm on a long crossing and giving you an opportunity to rest your arms and keep an eye out for hazards, to allowing you to leave the helm while coming into port to ready the fenders and lines. These are a great tool to make short-handed trips seem easy, and equally as beneficial on a fully crewed longer trip, allowing you to engage with your guests and keep an eye on the water. It's worth noting that we would never use a pilot instead of a helmsperson, just as another tool in his or her artillery. These systems are made up of the components you can see on the slide, which include a drive unit. This moves the rudder, the course computer, which tells the drive unit how much to move the rudder, a heading sensor or compass, which tells the computer which way the vessel is pointing, the rudder feedback, which indicates the rudder position, and finally, the control head, which is the interface for the user. This slide brings to us a question we answer all the time, which is, what is an AIS? It's a good question. It's actually an acronym that stands for Automatic Identification System. And next to a radar is the most handy piece of gear you can have to both identify other vessels and broadcast your position to them. The AIS consists of a VHF transmitter and receiver that provide a way of identifying and gathering information on many boats and most commercial ships. While there are two classes of AIS, Class A and Class B, all classes are visible on all units. Commercial and SOLAS registered vessels are required to run Class A AIS transceivers that not only transmit their static data, which includes their vessel size and navigational stats like course over ground and heading, but also their dynamic data, which includes their origin and destination. Class B transceivers broadcast static and limited dynamic data, and are a great value at under $1,000 to get you the info you need to be safe and send out your info to those watching so that they know where you are. They're a great way to connect with friends that you may be cruising with if you're out of cell range, but within VHF range. Probably one we all know and should have seen before is the VHF radio. These come in many shapes and sizes and are available in fixed and handheld versions. Our only real advice here for you is you should have one. These are the #1 tool for safety you can equip your boat with and do not cost an arm and a leg. Worth every penny, they provide access to weather and safety reports and allow you to communicate with your fellow boaters and land stations, marinas alike. A great thing to do at the beginning of every year is a radio check. This ensures your radio is transmitting so people can hear you and will get your calls when you need to reach out. Go ahead and try it. Out here in BC, you can call your friendly Coast Guard on 83 Alpha for a radio check next time you're on your boat. They'll be happy to answer, and you'll be happy knowing your system's working. With all the major pieces touched on, we should take a bit of time to talk about this NEMA 2000 thing I imagine some of us have heard about. This is a relatively new communication protocol that was developed to standardize the way equipment talks to each other on a vessel. With the advent of this new protocol and advances in technology, we can now monitor and communicate with nearly everything we can imagine on a boat. From tank levels to engine room temperatures to controlling the volume on our stereo, the list is really almost endless. Now that we have all this great gear, a big part of making it work and taking advantage of the functionality each piece of equipment offers is how it is integrated and set up. We work with a number of partners, and one of the standouts for us is ActiSense. They're an industry leader in communication devices and have really opened the door between legacy equipment and today's newest electronics. The answer is yes. We can get that information from the 1961 Ford Layman on your brand new chart plotter. And thanks to companies like ActiSense, you'll probably never look at your old temperature gauge again. EPIRB, shown here, or electronic position indicating radio beacon, and the PLB, or personal locator beacon, both broadcast an SOS to satellites. So search and rescue authorities like the Coast Guard know you need help. These are an item you should absolutely have when heading offshore, and as you'll see out on the water today, something common on even many coastal cruising vessels. The EPIRB is mounted to a vessel, and the PLB is worn personally. Both types can be activated manually or hydrostatically when they are submerged. So now that we have a hopefully pretty good overview of all the components that can make up our marine electronics system, the only thing left is to decide where we buy them and how we install them. When choosing where to buy the equipment, we really got 3 distinct choices in the market today. You have your local marine retailer, where you're usually going to find good inventory and competitive pricing. You have your online retailers, who will often have competitive pricing and generally less quality inventory levels based on the lack of specific knowledge of the market and what products are most popular versus ones that aren't. Your last but not least is your local service provider like Bluewater, which is a brick and mortar business. We will less often have high stock levels, but usually through direct relationships with the vendors, still have the ability to be competitive in the budget category. When deciding whether you'll install the equipment yourself or get help, there are a few things you should consider. If you like to do your own research, are good with hands-on, and like to do technical work, DIY may be a good solution that helps reduce budget and allows you to purchase more equipment instead of using the budget allocation on services. The risks encountered on a DIY project are usually centered around timing delays, missing equipment, and tools. One thing we often provide to our DIY clients is system engineering, design, and consulting, both at the beginning and end of their projects. This helps save them budget and engages the client in the system so that they understand all the components and their function. To compare it to a home type of project, if you're comfortable buying a kitchen appliance, for example, and installing it, this might be the path for you. If that sounds daunting, getting a service provider such as Bluewater may be an investment you put value in. Some risks when you're buying marine electronics are looking at the system that you're trying to either replace or supplement. As soon as you go beyond a single item system, we get into many compatibility issues, both derived from generational problems in terms of communication, such as a legacy radar with a new chart plotter, to compatibility issues just based on manufacture and inability to communicate. Self-design can often result in using basic advice that we gain from an online retailer or a local retailer and getting equipment that may not actually be needed and also not returnable. The last thing to consider here as part of the risk is the warranty and how you're going to be covered if there's a problem with the equipment. Generally can be pretty challenging to execute with an online retailer, and often with your local retailer, if they don't have technical staff, communicating the fault and obtaining the approval can be onerous. A local service shop always has the most informed staff members and will usually be able to get you a direct path to the manufacturer in order to expedite the warranty and replacement process. Selection is something that's important to a lot of people. And if you don't have equipment and are trying to just simply decide on what brand to purchase, this is probably at the top of your list. A local retailer is often going to have your best selection. Again, not the greatest support technically. The online retailer will usually be next in line on selection, but with even less support offered from a technical standpoint. The local service provider will generally, of course, have the greatest level of support, usually less stock sitting in store, but often systems installed with the option of having you out on a demo to see this equipment working in field. Last thing is timing, and generally something we want to hash out before we start the process. This can usually be broken down into two categories: need it now and I can wait. If you're really patient and you want to save the most budget, the boat show is going to be the best time to make a purchase. If you're set on your schedule for your project and have a deadline, deciding this well in advance, lining up the equipment, and if you decide, the service provider will allow you to get things done in the timeline you want and get out on the water and enjoy the new system. This is the end of my part of the presentation, and we appreciate all you guys taking the time to listen to what I have to say and hopefully glean a little bit of information for it that you find helpful. Happy to answer some questions now if we have any coming from the crowd.
All right, thank you, Andy. We have a few questions here. The first is from John. How to transmit our AIS info on an older 2012 or so Simrad chart plotter system. Apparently it uses an older cable connector style.
Yeah, that's a great question. The ActiSense product that I mentioned earlier, if you have a newer AIS and an older plotter, this will take the information that the AIS is producing, which is probably on NEMA 2000, and it will convert it to NEMA 0183, which was the protocol used prior to NEMA 2000, and allow that information to be displayed on the plotter. You will need a particular cord that is proprietary to the Simrad plotter, and it have an open NEMA port, but the connection is absolutely possible.
All right, next up, maybe this is a similar answer, but my chart plotter was purchased in 2007. How should I update my blue charts?
Unfortunately, at 2007, we're in a category that we are not able to update charts on. Not only are the manufacturers, if it was a Garmin blue chart, the manufacturer is not updating that chart data, and even getting replacements, or if you're cruising into new areas, getting replacements for them are difficult. You usually have to go online, and you can find some third-party eBay sellers often, but generally back all the way to 2007, the systems have moved on to new interfaces like SD cards and compact flash. SD cards are the most prevalent these days. So yeah, at 2007 and a blue chart, you're probably out of luck for any update.
Perfect. Next up, what is your opinion on software-based chart plotting, e.g. Navionics on a tablet versus dedicated hardware?
So another great question, and one we run into quite a bit. So we've got two very distinct arms with our business and these designs. We get a lot of folks coming in with boats that could just simply have an iPad on a stand or a 5 to 7 inch plotter with a chart on it. And we have larger vessels where we're doing completely integrated, and I mentioned earlier in the presentation, completely integrated PC running Noble Tech, for an example, software integrated with Simrad, Garmin, Raymarine, Furuno, whatever your brand of choice is, actual multifunction display. And what that allows you to do is have this marine system operating on a 12 volt. You have your computer operating on 120 through an inverter. If you have a failure of the inverter or any side of that circuit, you've still got your multifunction display, and vice versa. If you have a failure on the 12 volt side and the electronics, you've still got your computer running that Noble Tech. So that's for a system that really is bidirectional in communication and will allow you to have the redundancy of two parallel systems operating. With the choice of Navionics over a fixed mount marine proprietary type system, that comes down to fundamental safety and your choice. And I think at the end of the day, we all realize the iPad is not waterproof and is not meant to be in a marine environment. So Navionics is a great tool. Nearly all of our clients use it as a supplement on their iPad to an existing system on the boat. And all of the manufacturers that I just mentioned have got seamless route, waypoint, and information sharing between the iPad running Navionics app or iPhone and your chart plotter. So we see it as a great supplement. And fundamentally, with us looking at safety as one of the most important things when we're designing systems, we don't often recommend it as the only choice, but as to augment your existing gear.
Perfect. Another question here. Best online form or resource for information like what you've just given us?
That's a difficult one. So we probably, there are a number of boat, depending on what boat brand you own, there are great forums for each of the different brands out there, the major ones anyway. And then searching the brand of electronics that you are most interested in will often yield forums specifically on those. A great one for publications that's out of the US is called PANVO, P-A-N-V-O. And they publicize a lot of DIY installs and reports of them, equipment tests and reviews. And they're a great group of journalists that are sort of at the leading edge. They often attend all of the trade shows. And when there's new equipment released, they'll be the first ones to release info. So PANVO is another good one.
Perfect. Another question here. Can you talk more about the new MFDs for sailboat? What do you recommend?
That's a broad question. What we've seen just as a general trend is that all of the manufacturers, the major ones that we've all heard of, are all producing something very similar in terms of price, functionality, and user interface. So on a sailboat, for example, who's already got Raymarine instruments, we would often just recommend sticking with Raymarine and base that strictly on ease of connection between your existing legacy instruments and the new equipment. The other thing we often factor in is if somebody's coming to us from another vessel and has just bought a new one, we want to stick with something they're used to. And so if the other system had Simrad and the user was happy with it and understood how to operate it, we'd often recommend going with Simrad to save them having to learn a whole new user interface again and reteach themselves how to operate their marine electronics. But what we can say today, and I mentioned it earlier in the presentation, we really do believe it's very similar to what everybody, I'm sure, would resonate with everybody, is the way we saw electronics come down in price, consumer electronics like TVs. When the first flat screen TVs came out, your brother-in-law is getting a $5,000 plasma and, you've got this little 30-inch TV, and now you can get the $5,000 plasma for, $1,000. So we've really seen that in recent years with the MFDs. And although we have a great deal of respect for budget and where everybody lands, the value you're getting these days is very, very good from all manufacturers. They're producing, there's a lot of software, a lot of technology packed into these things, and you're generally not making a bad choice going with any one of them.
All right. Do you have any tips for the installation of a Wi-Fi extender? What equipment, antenna, and cable types might you need?
So the Wi-Fi extender is a good conversation and can often result in steering a person away from that particular item. Before we go into what components are there, the biggest thing to worry about with a Wi-Fi extender or amplifier is what Wi-Fi you are looking to amplify and extend. And so this question often starts and finishes quite quickly if our clients say, well, I'm in BC and I'm going to be cruising up the coast and I don't know where I'm going to end up. I might end up at, in Desolation Sound and in Squirrel Cove. And, I heard the bakery there has decent Wi-Fi. You're limiting yourself to whatever it is signal that you're going to try and actually get and amplify and use. So if you know that you're going somewhere, for example, you have your own private cottage up north or something, and you want to put your boat out front of there, and you have a good Wi-Fi signal, then we absolutely would recommend this. It'll allow you to stay on your boat and, treat that Wi-Fi zone down there just as if you're sitting inside the house or the cabin. If you're unsure about where you're going, the direction we've seen with the advent of 4G, now 5G, and LTE technology on cellular, the reduction in data costs for these cellular plans, what we do more often is a cellular amplifier and have folks using a cell modem or their phone as a hotspot to provide the internet on the boat. Again, when it comes down to the Wi-Fi, it's about the strength of signal in the place that you're going to get it. If it's a known quantity, we would absolutely recommend putting the equipment on. If it's an unknown, the way we are seeing sort of globally, but also here in our kind of smaller area, we're seeing the trend towards cellular data being the way that we connect to the world out there versus going through Wi-Fi. So if we are going the Wi-Fi route, there are many manufacturers. A lot of them are using the same type of equipment. Aegean is one, AIGEAN, that we use quite a bit, and that's what they're doing. They're taking a signal from a Wi-Fi. You have an antenna, you have the amplifier, which is usually 800 milliwatts. It will take that signal, it amplifies it, it goes out through an Ethernet cable, that runs down into the boat to a router that you install, similar to home. So you would have My Boat Wi-Fi, and then you connect to it. And there's a graphical user interface that comes with this that you log into, and you say, look, my cabin Wi-Fi, I want you to look at that and connect to it and rebroadcast it down on the boat here. So you're signed into your boat Wi-Fi. It's using the cabin Wi-Fi to supply the connection, and you're off to the races. These systems are not expensive. Depending on the size of boat, the installation can range, up to $1,000. The systems themselves, range, $300 to $700. So Aegean is a good one. That's a partner of ours, but many of them out there. Wave Wi-Fi is another.
Perfect. Neil asks, I have a Raymarine E80 Classic chart plotter and would like to add a radar to my boat. Do I need to stick with a Raymarine radar?
Great question, Neil. You are in a vintage that we would be calling it analog, and they no longer make radar that are compatible with that display. So in order to get radar to work with that display, you'd be looking for a used dome, and the type of dome you'd be looking for is a Raymarine Pathfinder, an 18 or 24 inch or open array, depending on whether you're on a motor yacht and want an open array. We mentioned it in the radar slide. The domes are the small birthday cake looking thing, and the open array is the spinning. The issue is that old enough vintage at the E80 Classic series that they don't make the radar antennas anymore. So if you want a new modern radar, you'd be looking at a new display and a new antenna.
All right. Your AIS slide had a tip about having GPS on board. So AIS doesn't function without GPS?
AIS, another great question, actually. So AIS have a number of different options in the way that they work and what you buy. So some of them will have an internal GPS, and they will use that to produce the position report that they transmit for the boat. If you're getting an AIS receiver, they don't need GPS connected to them. So if you're receiving only and you're not transmitting, GPS is not part of the equation. It can be, but does not have to be. If you're transmitting, we have to get that AIS, your GPS position, in order for it to accurately show where you are at. So the two types of systems you'll get, they'll have an internal GPS built into them, or you can put an external GPS source into them via either NEMA 2000 or 0183. But yes, the Class A, Class B transceivers, they will require their own GPS antenna, have an internal one, or require a source from an onboard GPS.
All right, next up, if I buy a used boat, do you have staff that can visit my boat and recommend upgrades?
That's right in our wheelhouse of what we do. And one of the things outside of simply buying used boats, something that we're doing a lot more now as well, is we're offering our services as a way to augment your standard marine survey, where you will go and look at 3 boats built by the same manufacturer in similar years, much different prices, because one boat is in a much better state or has had a refit done, whereas other needs repair or equipment replaced. What the surveyor won't tell you is the chart plotter's broken, or the bow thruster doesn't work, or the engine needs this. They'll tell you those things, but they won't tell you what it costs to replace them. And so what we've actually developed is a survey process that is above and beyond what the surveyor will tell you. So that if you're looking at a boat that's worth X amount of dollars, and you're looking at another one that's X minus 20%, but needs 4 or 5 new things, we can actually go in and say, okay, well, you know what? If you replace those things, you'll end up at the same budget as another boat, but instead of this other boat that's got things that are a few years old and you didn't choose, you've now bought this older boat with equipment you've replaced, you've chosen what you wanted, and you've chosen it with a reputable installer. You now have brand new systems with equipment you've chosen. So not only, yes, if you've already bought the boat and they're deciding to do upgrades, we have staff that can come down, whether that be mechanical or electrical, and can meet you and review these things.
Excellent. Next question here. What are your thoughts on joystick steering systems? Can you compare the Optimus versus the Helm Master?
So I can't speak specifically to those 2 examples and how their functionality is. What I can speak to is no joystick to joystick. This has been an amazing quantum leap, and one of the things we're speaking to about the advent and the advances in the last number of years. These systems have come way down in price and are way more broad reaching in terms of the type of engine package they can be installed with. We've seen many different examples, and from boats all the way up to 60 feet, where the joystick was the difference between these folks actually buying the boat and boating, versus getting out of it. So, our idea is to make boating easy and enjoyable for people. And so when these equipment manufacturers came out with something that really increased safety in docking and allowed folks that didn't have a lot of experience in docking and maneuvering boats to feel more comfortable, we were huge supporters of it. The Optimus system we've used, and we're part of the initial deployment here in Vancouver with Teleflex and a couple of the fishing charter guys, and it's a great system. If you can find yourself the spot to look at the budget and get over that side of it, you'd be no turning back. You'd be really happy with the way it changes boating for you.
All right, perfect. We have two questions in a row here about the same subject. People are telling me I should update my old Raymarine Quantum, but there are lots of things I like about my boat. Is this the place to spend money?
The radar one, and I didn't get into too much detail on the slide, but the radar one is an interesting one. And I think it's actually a valid point to bring up with yourself. If you're a fair weather boater and you're not going offshore, and for example, here in Vancouver is a great example we can make. If you're moored downtown at Royal Van or out at Jericho, and you just like to go over to Bowen and have lunch, boating without a radar is probably something that is totally fine to do. Where we did touch on in the slide, and what I think is important is that it's comes back to that all the gearheads and the mechanics will say the same thing. It always comes back to, do you want to have the horsepower and not need it, or do you want to need it and not have it? And I think most times people would say, I'd rather have it and not have to use it. So with the radar, it really will allow you to open up your cruising times and conditions to one that's not weather is no longer guiding you on whether you can go out or not. It does really need to be considered a piece of safety equipment, and is part of the consideration. If you're looking at doing a new system, today's domes are going to be around $2,000. So if you're looking at a typical 9 to 12 inch plotter being $2,000 to $4,000, you're going to add a couple thousand to $3,000 on for today's newest technology Doppler radars.
All right, perfect. What should I look for when comparing different brands of electronics for my 68-foot luxury yacht?
So one important part that we like to focus on is, first, do you have affinity with a specific brand? And if you do not, one of the things that we're very focused on aesthetic, and with a lot of folks call them the glass bridge style, and on a boat that is of that size, really important for us when going in and looking at the design that we pay attention to the aesthetic. Having these full glass bezel displays, really minimizing what you see on the dash. We've gone away from this Star Trek Enterprise flashing lights and switching knobs and doohickeys to really wanting it as clean as we can get it. In saying that, there isn't one of the manufacturers that is leaps and bounds better than the other in terms of providing something that's a great aesthetic and gives you great functionality. Every one of them are going to give you a full glass bezel, touchscreen, no button display. And often a lot of them, if you're wanting to have buttons and that tactile function, they'll have those integrated along the side too. So first of all, if you've got experience with a particular brand, our recommendation would be to stay with that brand. If you don't have an affinity, then it comes down to form factor, and you're going to be relearning the operating system anyway, so it'd be a good idea to get out and get your hands on some so you can see what you like to operate better or what you like the look of better. And that's something that I mentioned in the one slide. We often will have folks out to look at demos that we've done on other projects so they can really see. It's a lot different seeing it, installed in a boat than it is looking at it in a store on a shelf.
All right, next question here. How is the technology on wireless radar systems, specifically the Furano system?
So yeah, another good question. There's the wireless radars came out, let's say about 5 years ago. 5 to 7 years ago. And I think folks imagined, as they do with all these wireless type products that come out, that they're going to be way easier to install. Well, the reality is we still need to get a power cable up to that radar to get it to communicate. We've got to turn it on. And for us, we view those wireless units as a real DIY focused product. And I think if you talk to the manufacturers directly, Raymarine and Furano both make wireless ones, they would tell you that that's what they developed the product for. And for us, we just prefer to have the hard wire. We're running a power cable anyway. We need to get that down and connected to reliable power. well, let's just run the communication cable at the same time. So certainly not to steer you away from the wireless, because they both work well, both the Furuno and the Raymarine. Their imagery, their functionality, all of it is exactly the same as their wired counterparts. For us, in trying to recommend the most reliable and safe system for you, we're always going to choose the hard wire over the wireless.
Perfect. Can you discuss pricing on a new install versus standard hydraulic installation?
So new install, that question might have more pieces to it. Maybe talking about autopilot.
You can get back to us. I'll move on to the next
Come
one.
back to it.
I have a mixture of equipment, Raymarine and other manufactured items I want to purchase. My question is, which backbone should I use? Go with the CTOC or NEMA 2000?
So if the Raymarine equipment you're purchasing is new enough that it is CTOC NG, that's November Golf, that is Raymarine's version of NEMA 2000. And so although it is not fully compliant, the protocol and the way that the devices communicate is exactly the same. So you can have a NEMA 2000 backbone and have Raymarine CTOC NG components connected to that and communicating. So the recommendation would be the NEMA 2000 backbone with good equipment. That's the cables, the T's, the connectors, the terminators, all of that stuff, the power supplies, all of that is good to do with a good manufacturer. Meritron is one that we use a lot of and have been really happy with. So get your NEMA 2000 backbone in the boat, and Raymarine, Simrad uses a product called SimNet. Furuno has always long been NEMA 2000 compliant, so their communication protocol when we moved into the NEMA 2000 day and age has always been NEMA 2000. But yeah, if the Raymarine is new enough, it will be CTOC NG. You can build your backbone out of NEMA 2000 and connect into that. If it is older and it's CTOC 1 and it's pre-NEMA 2000, then you can still use that CTOC 1 network to communicate between those devices, and they make a bridge that will take from CTOC 1 to NG, which can then be connected into the NEMA 2000.
Perfect. Here's another question. We have a Raymarine chart plotter and wondering what is the best AIS to complement.
So I think all the manufacturers would like you to buy their own AIS, and they manufacture all these pieces in order to get you hooked into their ecosystem, no different than Apple or Android. The reality is you can choose whatever you want. What I would say is an overview for AIS these days, we don't have anyone buying new boats or new equipment from us that isn't getting an AIS transceiver. And so when I mentioned it in the AIS slide that for under $1,000, you can broadcast your position, depending on manufacturer, maybe 1,000, but you can broadcast your position and receive the position of other boats, which is a huge safety factor. One we often describe when we're taking people on orientations is, for example, for those of you that know Vancouver Harbor, well, the Stanley Park sticks out like a peninsula. And so often without radar on or without radar at all, you could be coming from one side of Stanley Park Peninsula and have a number of tugboats. It's a busy commercial port. So you could have a number of tugboats or freighters coming out under the Lionsgate, for example, and not even know it. And so you come around the corner and all of a sudden there's 3 tugboats wide and you can't get through and you have to come off. Well, if you have AIS, you can see them and they can see you before you're within visibility of each other. So really important that people understand this move from receive only to transmitting is not only about making your day safer, but also making everyone else's day that you're out on the water with safer. Long way of saying, use whatever manufacturer you want. As long as the Raymarine plotter is new enough and it's NEMA 2000, going with their AIS transceiver, which I think these days is called the 650, it is going to be just as good as going with Garmin's or any of the other manufacturers.
Perfect. Next up here, can you comment on what type of engine room camera monitoring system you would suggest, wireless or wired, for an older cruiser?
Definitely on, if what you're wanting to do is monitor video, absolutely, again, coming back to my comment on the radars, we prefer wired where we can. If you're wanting to have that up on a display, like a multifunction display, it depends on the vintage of the display, whether you're going to go with an IP camera. This is one that plugs into Ethernet and could then be viewable from off the boat, or an analog camera. This is one that plugs in with a normal analog cable and will go directly only into the single display. If you're looking for a system that will allow you to access the boat from off of it and see what's happening in the engine room and many other things, you'd want to move over to a monitoring system such as Barnacle or Ghost. But with the camera, I think, yeah, we'd recommend wired where possible.
Perfect. We've got a question here about the general life expectancy of an electronic system.
Well, I think this has changed over the years. A really easy way to understand how long things can last, and why choose one brand over the other, that we always have with our clients is go down to one of the commercial ports and have a look at the fish boats down there and the guys that are working. And what you'll see are 20-year-old radars, most often from Furuno, that are still working the same way they did 20 years ago. So there is no actual shelf life. A real important way to get the most longevity you can out of an electronics package is to have it installed correctly. This is to eliminate issues that may come from water ingress, from having radars or displays installed in such a manner that they would allow water in, to actually wiring things correctly so that we know that the lifespan of this product has been getting the voltage it's designed to take. And so in a 12-volt system, it's not receiving 10 volts all the time because we've got bad connections and lots of resistance. It's actually receiving the 12 volts that your battery are delivering it. So that's the side of it from how long should they last and do they last. What we're seeing now is probably very similar to consumer electronics. Is your flat screen functioning from 10 years ago? Probably. Is it affordable to move on to the newest flat screen that is a little bit better resolution? Probably is the answer for most people. We have a lot of refit work and a lot of design that we do for clients based around systems that are not that old. The quantum leap, for sure, was getting everybody into the touchscreen. This is from the manufacturing point of view, getting everybody into the touchscreen sort of revolution and the NEMA 2000 communication, and that was all done, somewhere inside of 10 years ago. So we've got systems that are north of 5 years old that have absolutely no business being changed out, and other than processor speed, are really just as functional as today's. So the quantum leap having been done, the next thing we see out there is not going to be strides away from what we see right now. You'll see faster processor speeds, etc. But for the most part, the functionality from systems as old as 5 years ago will be the same as what you're seeing today.
Perfect. What is the difference between a GNSS antenna and a GPS antenna?
GNSS and GPS are the same. So we, probably about 15 years ago, as a consumer group, were given the access to what they call the Wide Area Augmentation System, the WAAS. And this was a group of government satellites, US government satellites, that had been used by the military primarily for triangulation and GPS coordinates. So we've got, as a leisure market, we've got access to that constellation. And yes, all of your GNSS and GPS antennas can see these satellites and give you, a much greater degree of fix than they used to.
All right, and I think we have time for just one more question here. I have a Garmin 922. So is it easy to install AIS, and what would the cost be?
You got me there. I would have to look up that unit and its wiring diagram. If it is in the vintage of NEMA 0183, absolutely no problem. You can get an AIS. get it installed on the boat, and there's a way to make the two communicate with each other quite easily, whether it's through an adapter, or the unit that you've got, the 922 has got NEMA 2000. It can connect directly to the same backbone and communicate that way. But yeah, certainly something that one of our many electricians could ask. If you want to take our contact info, we'd be happy to look it up for you.
All right, and I think that brings us to the end here today. Andy, is there anything you want to add before we go?
No, just thanks everybody for joining, and hopefully we were able to, demystify the great world of marine electronics for you. And if anything out of this has got some more questions, or you'd like to talk to us further, our contact info is up here on the screen, and we'd love to hear from you.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much, Andy, for being here with us today. And thank you all for joining us at home. If you're interested, we would like your feedback on either this seminar, or if you have any ideas on topics that you would like to see us cover in the future. Simply click on the Evaluate tab located just above the seminar description to complete the form. After the show, all attendees will also receive a post-show survey. Be sure to check out all the features here at the the Vancouver International Boat Show Virtual. If you have any questions, check out our info booth for some answers, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day here at the boat show. Once again, thank you, Andy, for your time, and everyone at home, take care.
Thanks very much.